Hi friends, it's Sam. I have a story I'm going to tell you today. It's called Honoring Life. It's a story of Beatrix Potter. Beatrix Potter is an author. She wrote the Benjamin Bunny and Peter Rabbit books. You've probably read a lot of them. This is one of mine. She did all the drawings too, so this has a bunch of her stories in it. I'm not reading you a story that she wrote, but I'm going to read you a story about her life. So you can listen to this and afterwards maybe find some Beatrix Potter books to read. You might think that Beatrix Potter was a lonely child. Perhaps you would be right. True, she lived in a large city, London, England. True, the only child she had to play with was her brother, Bertram, and he was usually away at boarding school. Beatrix had no school friends because she didn't go to school. Instead, a governess taught her at home. There were no other children her parents would let her play with in their London neighborhood. But Beatrix was not as lonely as you might think. She had the friendship she felt for all the animals and plants she met on her rambles through the countryside. Beatrix's families took long vacations in Scotland and the Lake District of England. She brought the countryside back to London by taming wild rabbits as pets. She kept country mice in cage and also lizards, snakes, and even a pet bat. In the countryside, Beatrix loved to spend hours out of doors. She drew detailed pictures of the plants and the animals she found. She wanted to know everything about the natural world. She planned to be a scientist when she grew up. But Beatrix was young more than 100 years ago. It wasn't proper for a middle-class girl to have a job, particularly as a scientist. Beatrix's parents were very concerned that she would grow up to be a proper young lady. No one encouraged her to draw animals and plants, but Beatrix kept studying her friends in the natural world on her own. The drawings and paintings she made were greatly respected by scientists who wanted to learn more about the animals and plants and appreciated a close and careful look at nature. Beatrix was especially interested in mushrooms and mosses. By observing these plants, she discovered that lichen that grows on rocks and trees is actually a combination of a moss and a fungus. Her scientific sketches of nature, even though they helped make discoveries, were not the same as having a real job as a scientist. But when Beatrix was grown up, her loving attention to the natural world earned her a different success than she had ever imagined. In 1893, Beatrix sat down to write a letter to a 5-year-old Noel, who'd been sick in bed for a long time. She started her letter, "I don't know what to write you, so I shall tell you a story of 4 little rabbits whose names are Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. Have you heard of these little rabbits?" Well, Beatrix Potter made them up based on rabbits she had watched closely and her imagination. She drew Noel a picture of the 4 young rabbits and their mother. So began the tale of Peter Rabbit, which you may know, and children have been enjoying that book, that story, for more than 100 years. Beatrix wrote and illustrated 22 more books, all about the animals that had been her friends in the English countryside. Hedgehogs, frogs, ducks, house mice and field mice, squirrels. She knew them very well from spending time among them and observing their ways. Beatrix earned enough money for her book to buy a farm in the English Lake District, a place she had always loved. She raised sheep on her farm. Over time, she bought more land to keep it as a natural home for animals and plants and not used for factories and houses. When Beatrix Potter died in 1943, she gave 1,000 acres to the National Trust, an English organization that protects and preserves beautiful natural lands. If you travel to England today, you can visit Beatrix Potter's farmhouse. You can walk in the countryside just as she did so many years ago when she was a young child. Yet you only need to open one of her books to meet the animals and plants she loved. By observing, loving, and drawing her friends, she preserved her connection with the world of nature for children like all of you and all of us to share.